All right, thank you all for being here. I'm excited to show you a little bit of what I work on and the tools I use. I'm going to be focusing a lot today on agentic AI, and so I'll be talking a little bit about what that is and how we can use it. The whole idea behind what I want to show you is using agents with AI, you can really free up more time for people. Working at a nonprofit, working at a church, that's really what we're about, is spending time with people, investing in people, and making a difference in people's lives. And sometimes through the work, that can get lost because we're stuck in drudgery, things that we have to do to get our work done, to perform our jobs, but we lose that ability to work with people. And whether or not you're at a nonprofit, whether or not you're at a church or a business, whatever that is, most likely your goal is to connect with people, whether that's the people you're working with, your boss, your family, freeing up more time to spend time with the people you love. So I want to talk through a little bit how I've done that and how I've seen success, and give you some of the details there. AI slopped my slides here, so it might get a little bad, it might be a little good. So I'll let you decide that. I want to talk a little about what has been said about agentic AI just in the last year or two. It really has made a turn. The ability for agents and AI to perform has really changed in this last year. I put some quotes up here. One of the ones that's been most interesting is Andrej Karpathy, who's one of the founders at OpenAI. He recently left, or I guess not that recently, but he's moved from saying, hey, it's not really a place where it can do much. We have prototypes, but AI is not really at the place of being a coworker yet, to now he's saying, I haven't typed a line of code since December, in a state of psychosis trying to figure out what's possible. And that phrase, because he's such a leader in this field, AI psychosis, has kind of become one of the catchphrases around here. It's as we describe this massive change that we've seen just in the last couple of months. And so what I want to say is the time for AI in agentic AI is not coming, it's actually here. It's a time for us to apply it now. And so I want to show you first a little about what agentic AI is. The best example I have for it is actually something that's not AI. It's something that I fell in love with a couple years ago before AI became common, and it's my little Roomba at home. Soon after COVID, I have a 9-year-old and 10-year-old now, but they were much younger then. I spent a good deal of my time at home cleaning the floors. And as much as I love doing that, it wasn't my favorite thing to do in life. And so eventually, I think as a birthday present at one point, my wife got me a little Roomba. And even back then, they were pretty simple. I joked around, it was like one of those screensavers where it basically just bounced around the room mindlessly. But even so, I was fascinated by it. I would find myself risking being late to work, watching this thing work around my house. And I think the thing that fascinated me was, it was pretty effective. It wasn't perfect back then, but it got the job done. And even back then, it had some of the capabilities of what I might call an early agent. The biggest thing, and the big thing that I would distinguish most as an agent as I'm talking about this, is it's something not just that you ask to do a task, it's something that you give a role to, an entire role. And in this case, the role was clean my floors. A pretty simple role, but it was perfectly set to do it. I gave it a role, and it had persistent memory. So it knew as it moved around the room, it built a simple map. It knew where the walls were, it knew where the doors were, it knew how to get around. And so the next time it acted, it did a little better. And the next time after that, a little better. The other thing it was scheduled. So once I told it to do that role, it did it on a schedule for me. It did it every morning or every evening or whenever I left the house based off how I had it set up. And so it really allowed me to hand off this task almost entirely. I didn't have to, it could be triggered, but I really didn't have to. The other thing it had was tools. And I'll talk a little bit about the tools that AIs use today, but it had sensors, it had brushes to get things done, and it was able to reach out and get updates on its own. So it was constantly using tools to improve itself. And a lot of this was done autonomously, and that's one of the other tying themes here was it worked on its own. And that, I think, I would stand there sometimes and just watch this little guy work, amazed at what it could do. And it was so simple and so dumb sometimes, but the fact that it could do it autonomously really mesmerized me. Um, as we're moving into AI agents now, obviously they've moved a long way. I now have a newer Roomba because I love that little one so much, but eventually they burn out and break. And it does so much better. It has a better brain in it. It builds better maps. I can schedule it more eloquently. And as we move now into AI agents that we're seeing at a massive scale, they have many, many more tools. Their memory has grown from just enough to hold information about a room to it can hold entire libraries of information. The tools they use today are not just being able to sense what's in a room. It can reach out to tools like Canva. It can reach out to tools like your Google Analytics or whatever you're using to track what's happening on your website, and it can make use of those. One of the biggest systems that I'm going to talk about today is called OpenClaw, and it became very well known for its ability to use many tools back to back, and it really amazed people to see what it could do in massive scale. I'm going to talk a little bit next about how this applies to my job. So I want to give you a view of what my job looks like. I work at One&All Church, and I've got a lot of different pieces to my job. I get to work in check-in on the weekend, making sure all the kids get checked into classes. With that comes, attendance, like community group attendance, giving, volunteer management, website, mobile app. So we've got a hand in a little bit of everything. Fortunately, we have one platform that can handle almost all of that, which is great for my role. But it does kind of create this octopus feeling of trying to touch so many things at once. I can be working on a mobile app, and then when check-in goes down, that becomes the most important thing to do. And so I end up having to wear many hats at once. And you've probably felt the same way in your role. There's the thing that you need to do, but then there's all these little things you have to do as well. And so one of the things that AI agents can help us do, is hand off some of those roles that you have to do. Maybe it's not your strong suit, and have it take those fully. I want to talk through the agents I work with at One&All. I use a system called Paperclip. Man, Paperclip does not come across well for this microphone. And I'll talk to you a little bit about how that system works, but these are the agents I have set up. I have one that manages my ClickUp. ClickUp is, if you guys use Asana or Trello or something like that, it's my task management system. It reads through every task that it gets assigned to me. It goes through and it does research on each one of those tasks. So I've set it up so it can look through my website, it can look through our database, it can read all the information that we have available to us, so that when I first see the task, I don't just see a task that says, hey, this thing needs to be fixed. It goes and researches that thing. It figures out what exactly is broken in that thing and who it affected and why, and what I need to do to fix it. Sometimes those tasks are so well built out, it basically just says, click here and I think it'll be fixed. Sometimes it's more involved in that, but it can do this first step for me was probably one of the pieces of my job that I liked least. I was just basically digging around, trying to find information, sometimes going back and forth 4 or 5 times with someone to try and get that information. It can do it without me even touching it. So it's great to have that. And then from there, I have another agent that handles Rock Ops. The system that we use at our church is called Rock RMS. So that's what I've named him. He's my Rock Ops guy. And he goes out and he actually builds things. He fixes things. He writes code for me. He researches even more. If it moves beyond the state of understanding how what's needed for the task, he's basically my my software engineer. And then I actually have some other agents that work behind the scenes as well, and they help these guys. And I've just gotten started on this, but it's funny how we have actually started to build out management and middle management to help these two guys get their jobs done. So I have a CEO agent. And he was actually the first guy I hired. He's the onboard. I onboarded him first, explained to him what I did at my job, and he went out and they actually call it in Paperclip hiring each one of these other agents. So he specifically gives them tools and informs them on how to work and what our systems are, and he monitors them as they go. I also have another one that's my tool scout. So every once in a while, once a day, he goes out and he looks to see how the other agents are working, sees if there's anything he can do to add to them and improve them. And he proposes them to me and the CEO agent who responds up to me. And then I have another CTO, and he basically does all the behind-the-scenes stuff. Paperclip is kind of problematic in and of itself, and it breaks fairly often. And so he sits there and he watches just basically the logs going on, and if things get weird and breaks, he isn't working with the agents directly, but he's actually doing behind the scenes stuff to fix the entire system. So I've kind of built a little mini company in there. Through this, I know it sounds really complicated, but I've been able to take hours that used to take work that maybe took me 3 hours down, in some cases just down to 30 minutes. It brings only the most important information to me, lets me take action on them immediately, and get on to the next thing more quickly, and get on to dealing with people more quickly. I want to talk through a little bit of the ladder of agents, as I call them, that you can employ. I use a system called Paperclip, or you can use a similar system called OpenClaw. They're both great systems. I would not recommend you start with those. They're very difficult to set up, and I want to read you a text message that one of the guys I work with sent to me today, actually right before I stepped on stage here, because it really does communicate well the way we feel about we love our big systems, but what he said to me was, "Good luck today, knock 'em dead. Don't tell them to start their own AI companies unless they want constant frustration." And so take that to heart. He and I both love tinkering with these systems, building them, but it's kind of like building something in your garage. You know it's going to come with some toil and some work, and it's going to break every once in a while, and you just kind of have to be okay with that. I would recommend you start down with one of these far easier to implement systems that really gets you in the process of the handing off things to an agent. One of the ones that I have loved, I actually looked into it primarily for the purpose of talking to you guys today, is a system called Poke. And I started using it just a little bit, and I actually really love it. You can go to poke.com. You can do it now if you want. And it'll basically walk you through an onboarding process for this agent. And then it almost entirely works on your phone via text message. And I recommended this to my lead yesterday when he was asking about this. And because he works almost entirely via text message, he actually doesn't use a computer. He's fully capable of it. He just doesn't like it. And via Poke, you can go in and set up. It asks for access to your calendar and to your Gmail or your Outlook, whatever you're using initially. And it kind of learns about you and what your processes are and what you do. And I was tempted when I was explaining this to my lead the other day. I gave it kind of just a quick response via text message. I said, "Hey, what are the great restaurants around me today?" And I had to stop myself because that's not what agents are, and that's not what they should be used for. That's what ChatGPT is used for. The better thing to do, if I had time, would be, "Hey, I want you to be my restaurant expert. I want every day for you to find the best restaurants for me and help me improve my culinary palate." And that's really what you can use it for. So I would caution you, don't go the easy road and give it a little thing to do. As you're working with these agents, really lead into onboarding them and teaching them more about you and giving them big goals to achieve. After playing with Poke a little bit, I realized it can do just about everything. Just through text message, it can research things, it can learn about things, it can tie into a whole lot of sources out there and really get things done for you. So I really recommend you look into it. The next one I wanted to talk about was ChatGPT and Claude. You guys probably have used some of these in some ways. They're pretty common in the AI world. But they have aspects to them that you can use. Claude more than most. So ChatGPT does have some agentic abilities to them, but they live more on the coding side. If you install, there's an app out there called Codex that they're starting to move more towards being used for less coding uses. But Claude is the big one that you can switch over into a mode that is far more agentic. It's called, I knew I was going to blank on it, so I wrote it down specifically. Claude Cowork. And you can basically give it full control, more or less, of your computer. And it can do a lot more than you would expect. You can set up schedules for it to do things. And you'd be pretty amazed at what it can do. Again, you got to be careful when you're using it because you're going to be tempted to use it like ChatGPT and just ask it simple questions. The goal there is to start to move more towards asking it to do big jobs, asking it to do entire roles for you. And as you ask it to do that, as it learns more about you, it will be able to do more and more of that. The next one as you're going up this ladder is software like Manus or Perplexity Computer. Perplexity is a great one to if you really want to take it to the next step, because it really is geared around, especially Perplexity Computer, about being more of an agent for you. If you start going through their onboarding process, I recommend you really lean into that and at least give it a shot. A lot of these, as they start moving to become more and more complex, do have an aspect to them where they basically have full control of a computer in the background. So you might think, well, what's the real goal of that? It really moves it from being able to do just a thing to being able to do almost anything. So it starts acting like an employee would for you, where if you ask it to go find information, it can go search for that information. If you ask it to go do something, it can go do that. But if it starts running into roadblocks, a lot of your chat based solutions right now will basically say, I can't do that. With the ability to use a full computer behind the scenes, it will go and find the software it needs, as if an employee would, install that software and figure out how to do it. And so you start really unlocking some new abilities there, which is pretty exciting. And then this last one, I did want to explain a little bit more, is Paperclip and OpenClaw. They are available. Oh, wait. I did want to talk about these. I think I actually went through most of this. Here's just some examples of how you can set up agents more of within it and how you use them in each of your areas. So I did want to talk about this top rung a little bit more. Like I said, I use Paperclip a lot. It does have a version of it that's a little easier to install. So if you're ready to try that out once you get up there, there's a version, and I'll give you a QR code at the end that you can find. It's called Paperclip Desktop. That's easier to install than the one you'd find originally. Both Paperclip and OpenClaw have to be installed. They're really nerdy, so you have to install them through the terminal, which means you have to go back to almost like the blinking text mode of your computer, which can be kind of scary. And so there are installers now that make it easier for these to install. But still, like I said, it's going to be a little bit of work to get them set up behind the scenes. And one of the ways that I did that is you actually use some of the earlier elements on the ladder to get that done. So let's say you run into a problem of it's giving you errors. You can actually go to Claude and say, hey, this thing is giving me errors. And that agent will take care of fixing this one and get this one set up. And so that's how you kind of move through each stack of this process. So I just want to give you some kind of examples of what I would recommend you can do just this week. Go ahead and set up Poke. It is the easiest, funnest way to get started on this. It does a great job of kind of starting that agentic conversation with you. And I would say as you go through it, just push it to do more and more. The original onboarding might get you a couple things done, but once you get through that first step, really push it to say, okay, now you know more about me. What can you do for me? And it's going to give everybody a different answer based off what it sees in your email, what it sees on your calendar, and what it knows its capabilities are. And then come back and say, hey, send me an update tomorrow about this and help me improve. And you'll be amazed what it can do. The next one would be give Claude a project. So go over to Claude and set something up over there in Claude Cowork. You'll be also, because that one lives on your computer, it does have more capabilities than Poke. And again, you'll be amazed to see what you can do there. It can work in Canva. It can work in any of these software programs you're probably already working in. And then ChatGPT is another one. It's got a great agentic system in it that should be easy to use just right off the bat. Then I wanted to head off to the table discussion. Actually, first, should I do Q&A or table discussion? What's best? Yeah, okay. I'll do a quick Q&A. Any questions about this? Yeah. That's a really, really good question. And it's something that I'm talking about constantly with people I'm working with because I have that same feeling. I would say right off the bat, my personal experience is agents have not removed any roles originally around me, or I've never felt afraid I'm not going to lose my job to one of these at the current state. That's not to say it's going to change in the future. In fact, I've never done more work. I've never spent more nights up till 2 a.m. when I shouldn't have, because of what they can do. But I think you bring up still a very good point there. What happens when we start giving off these roles entirely and we no longer need some people to do these things? I think I think that is undecided yet as to what's going to happen next, and I'm not an expert in that. What I have seen in other fields in this is with each of these capabilities brings more promise and more ability. And so while maybe a role is taken care of for me in this way, it also unlocks something new for someone else, and a capability they couldn't do before, they're now able to do, and so basically they're elevated up to a new level. But I think there is going to have to be a big societal shift as we all figure out how each one of these roles shift. So I don't deny there's going to be a change coming there, and that's one of the reasons I want to teach people about this today, is so that they can be aware of how it's going to impact them and how they can use it, but then also help people around them. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah. Very good question. So I have to be careful about that. You can make this thing directly relational. So you could tell the agents to communicate with people directly. I've hesitated away from doing that because I want that part to be me. And so the way I use it in my work is I use it to inform how I relate to people. So I guess kind of going back to the ClickUp example, that's our task management system. It helps me to have better information so that my interactions with my coworkers are more fruitful. So I'm using more of their time in a better way, rather than asking them silly questions that I probably should have known. Does that answer your question, or is there a different aspect to that? Okay. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah, and I'm really glad you brought it up. And honestly, I probably should have led with that first, especially with the warning that I gave you with my coworker. It's something you need to be very, very careful about. I would say one of the reasons to start off at the lower rungs is to kind of work up and figure out what you're comfortable with in that process. Because you're right, as you move to the higher rungs in this, you're giving over more and more control. One of the examples at the very highest rung there with OpenClaw, which was one of the most ambitious projects in this area, because it can be installed on your computer and because it can give more or less full control over to your computer, it can do some pretty interesting things. Some of them are really, really productive, and some of them are really scary. I mean, people have broken their entire computers. One guy who was being really ambitious with it told his OpenClaw, hey, work on all this stuff for me, and every morning at 9 a.m., give me an update. And it did a great job. It emailed him every morning, and he would respond back to it, or he would chat with it via Telegram. One morning he slept in, or he had some business he had to do, and it didn't get a response back from him, and it became to get a little worried. It was told to do this, and it didn't feel like it was doing its job well. And so it tried some other methods. It emailed him, didn't get anything there. And so what it did was, he was a software developer. It looked around on his computer and found the information it needed to set up an account, to set up a phone number, figured out other information it needed to create a voice using AI, and it placed a phone call to him that he received at 10 o'clock in the morning saying, hey, you told me to get in touch with you and tell you about your work today. This is what you're supposed to be doing. Which was exciting, but kind of horrific too, right? This thing has gone, it's trying to be helpful, but in its own way, very much going rogue. And so you do have to be very careful with these systems. They can do other things, and as I'm working with it, I'm very careful as you go up that ladder to put in guardrails. About half the conversations I'm asking with it is, hey, how can I do this as safe as possible? What's the way I can do this to make sure you have only the level of access you need to do this job? Any other questions? All right, thank you so much. So for the table discussion, I would love you guys to talk through just what's one task you do every week you wish you could hand off to an agent or a smart assistant. And just kind of talk through that.